Hello listeners, this video discusses A Room of One's Own. It is an extended essay written by Virginia Woolf. Adeline Virginia Woolf was born in the year 1882 and died in the year 1941. She was an English writer. She is considered as one of the most important modernists of 20th century, and she is a pioneer to use stream of consciousness as a narrative device. Stream of consciousness comes under literary criticism. It is a narrative mode which attempts to depict the multitudinous thoughts and feelings that passes through the mind of a narrator. The notable works of Virginia Woolf are Mrs. Dalloway, To the Lighthouse, Orlando, The Waves. Virginia Woolf married Leonard Woolf, who was a British political theorist and author. Let us see an outline of this essay, A Room of One's Own, which was published in the year 1929. This essay is based on two lectures that Woolf has delivered in the year 1928 at Newnham College and Girton College. These are women colleges at the University of Cambridge. In this essay, we see Woolf has used metaphors in order to explore the social injustices, and she comments on women's lack of free expression. She highlights on the essential point that says a woman must have money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Woolf also describes the influence of women's social expectations as domestic childbearers, ignorant and chaste. Woolf also addresses the point of where women for decades marginalized and the patriarchy dominated literature. So if women are allowed to write fiction, then women's problem would be addressed in fiction, so that the patriarchal system and ideology would change. If women are given space to write fictions, then the social problems shift shapes. The essay is considered as an exemplary piece of modernist criticism that questions about traditional values enforced on women. The essay also highlights and examines with a specific topic, women and fiction. Under this thesis topic, women and fiction, Woolf has demonstrated many women characters in fiction. She says that great women authors in English history who wrote fiction have used pseudonyms, and also the fictions that are written about women by men. Woolf claims that women in patriarchal society experience oppression. She thus says if women are to be valued in the literary world, then they need a room of their own and a reliable income to produce authentic works of fiction. This essay has a dramatic setting of a room of one's own in which Woolf is invited to lecture on the topic women and fiction. In this thesis, under women and fiction, she uses partially fictionalized narrative in order to make her thesis more thinking. Let us now see the fictionalized characters used by Virginia Woolf in her topic Women and Fiction. She first uses herself to be a character in this essay. Though she explicits herself as an author, she creates a division between herself and the ideas of the narrator. As the essay starts, she introduces the narrator, but when the essay ends, she takes the role of the narrator. In order to make opinion, Woolf invents a character as a narrator, where she says that the readers can recognize her and call her as Mary Beaton, Mary Sheaton, Mary Carmichael, or by any name the reader pleases. This narrator guides the audience, that is the readers, to visualize series of experiments. Judith Shakespeare, it is an imagined sister of William Shakespeare. If Shakespeare has a daughter named as Judith, and if her talent is equal to Shakespeare, then she would not have been given any opportunity, or his sister would not be able to achieve the same success as him. Judith's life would be fraught with tragedy. First, her life would be persuaded by her family, that is, into early marriage, and then she would have escaped to London to free herself in order to pursue writing. If she approaches any theatre in order to do her writing, then she would be raped and become pregnant by any men there in the theatre. Then writing or a passion to write would be impossible by her, and eventually she kills herself without accomplishing her passion. Woolf, in this essay, she brings the ghost of Judith Shakespeare and tells the young women that they have the power to be the voice that Judith Shakespeare never had in her life. Next character is Mary Beaton, who is the narrator's aunt. Mary Beaton's death has afforded the narrator a generous allowance of £500 a year. With this sum of money, the narrator lives a comfortable life in order to do her writing career, and this financial security has given her or made her to realize the importance of money. And she says that if women are not having a financial security, then they would suffer, ending up intellectual, creative poverty and material poverty. The next character is Mary Carmichael, who is an imagined author of a book called Life's Adventure. This is just a fictionalized work of Virginia Woolf. When she reads this work, she criticizes for the broken sentences that fails to emulate the master of sentences, that is Jane Austen. Then she uses another minor character, that is Mary Sheaton, who is the friend of narrator who is studying at Furham College, with whom Woolf shares a simple college meal and discusses about the history of underfunded women's college. Let us now see the summary of this essay, A Room of One's Own. In this essay, Woolf has talked about a group of young women scholars with the subject titled Women and Fiction. In this thesis, Woolf has emphasized that women needs money and a room of her own if she is to write fiction. Woolf thinks that if she has to bring a conclusion to this topic, then she has to impart some truth only if she gives some description of her own experience. So she adopts the voice of a narrator. The name of the narrator is not mentioned since she represents every woman. The narrator also begins by narrating her day that she spent as a speaker in the University of Cambridge. There is a series of imagination that runs around her essay. At first, when she is about to present her lecture in the college, she runs and rushes across the college lawns. She is then stopped by a beadle. Beadle is a guard there in the college who informs Woolf that the lawn is reserved for fellows and scholars. Then she is shut of several other areas in the college just the same way. Before she goes to a lunch party, she gets inspired of a bright conversation of the men and women there. Then she eats her dinner at the fictional women's college for him. The meal is quite different. By narrating these series of incidents, she reflects women's education. She says that women have been shut out of education and financial and intellectual legacy that men have always accessed to. Then there comes another series of incidents. The next day, the narrator goes to the British Library. She finds that institution is masculine. There she finds in the library there are shelves of writing by men about women. While she looks at it, she gets angered and she is curious in knowing about men's scholarship. She says that men writers have used scholarship and literature to affirm the inferiority of women, and mostly they, by talking about women's inferiority, they protect their own superiority. Looking at the legacy of women writers in the past, the narrator could hardly find some women writers, so she invents the story of William Shakespeare's sister, who's named as Judith Shakespeare. She is a woman of genius and a potential personality, but she is never able to write a word, and then she ends up committing suicide just because how the society is structured against women. Judith is forbidden to pursue her desire, and then she gets pregnant and killed herself. Now the narrator gives some list of writers in the history, those writers who influenced each other. She says that Alfra Ben, who represents a change in the English literary landscape, because she was a middle class woman who wrote to make her living during the 17th century. Through Alfra Ben, many readers who are women, especially, can take her as an inspiration for gaining financial success through writing. She also says that Charlotte Bronte and George Eliot, they had showed up their own frustration in their writing. Woolf has also said that Jane Austen and Emily Bronte has transcended their own writing and skills. These two shows how they can exemplify and become excellent in writing. Then Woolf uses Mary Carmichael, which is a fictional character who has written life adventures. In this imaginary novel invented by Woolf, Woolf says that women characters in this fiction are defined by their relationships to men. She further emphasizes that men writers talk about the women extremities, but they fail to address normal women's life. However, any writing of women so far is fraught with bitter, as there is limitation to expose on gender. At the conclusion part, Woolf, she takes away her persona and considers to be a narrator, where she concludes by inspiring all women for a call to action. She calls the audience from Newham and Girton colleges to create a legacy for their own daughters. She says that fiction is for the good of everyone and not just for the good of an individual. She says that through writing there is something good for the universal, and so she calls the women writers to write ferociously. She conjures the imagination of Judith Shakespeare, who lies dead, buried beneath the streets of London. Making a point referring to Judith, she says that all is not lost for this tragic character. She says that poets never really die, but they are regenerated and reinterpreted and given life by others. She calls the audience, especially women, to take the opportunity to bring Judith to life and create the history that Judith never had. Let us see the themes and literary devices carried in this essay as a tool by Virginia Woolf. First, she talks about financial and intellectual freedom that women should have. She says that women must have their own control and a space for themselves in order to gain intellectual freedom, and thereby they can able to write what they have in their mind. They shouldn't have any interruption or sacrifices made to writing. Virginia emphasizes on women and society, where she addresses the societal factors that deny women from opportunities, because the society aims women to have children, marry at an early age, and do tasks like mending and caring for the family, and not being educated. And thereby, women end up dramatically titled in favor of men. She addresses the taboo that sustains with female homosexuality. Next, she talks on the theme of creating a legacy of women writers. Woolf voices out on behalf of the legacy and the history of women writers, and she offers some ideas to the minds of the future. And so she uses the women from the past and the present to help her make an argument to improve women's discourses. So she makes a network of women who have missed out their potential because of their status as women and the condition of poverty and lack of education. By creating an imaginary sister of Shakespeare, Woolf emphasizes on the anonymity and invisibility of women because the history has forgotten women, and in the future she calls for action in order to express the minds of women. The next is truth. Virginia Woolf wants the readers and her audience to find out the truth in what she is saying. She portrays the truth of herself shut out of college buildings and women writers absent in the library shelves of a great university. She observes the intellectual missing in the universities, especially the intellectual ideologies of women. Woolf wants to take away the demands of traditional womanhood. She emphasizes that women must have her own family spaces and should not be dependent upon men. Rather, she has to own her own property. Only then women writers can create their own legacy in literary field. Hope this video helps. If you have query, please write it down. Thank you for listening.